All right, ladies and gentlemen, Josh Reeves here with you. This is the February 19th, 2015 edition of the broadcast. We're going to be getting into some various and sundry news items with you here tonight on the show. If you keep seeing me look up, that's because I'm looking at my monitor and whatnot. It's kind of different for me to do something like this because I usually do radio broadcasts where I don't have to worry about somebody seeing my face or seeing me or anything. So it's kind of a different vibe for me. But if you see me constantly look up, that's what it is. Just to let you know, I'm looking at monitors and reading stuff off of here. So I do my best to look at the camera and make eye contact when I can. But I'm going to be constantly looking at that screen to read stuff. So that's what that is. Want to give a little FYI out there. Thank you so much for being with us. We are going to be getting into a lot of news here for you tonight on the show. Various topics of what I want to get into. There's been a kind of a shortage lately of things to talk about. I'm kind of, instead of doing shows every day and every night and not having stuff to talk about, what I'm doing is kind of waiting until a bunch of stuff piles up and then do it all in one shot, because it really definitely gives a lot more substance to the shows and stuff. I really kind of felt that doing shows all the time kind of gets watered down. Now, if I've got enough stuff to talk about to do shows every day, that's great. But the problem is, as I've stated in other shows, I just don't always know what it is people want to talk about, and it's hard for me, after doing the show for 8 years, to decide on certain things to talk about besides what I'm already researching or into or what have you, because I don't like to repeat myself, and I certainly don't want to trod down roads I've already trodden down a million times, even though sometimes it's necessary and sometimes you have to do that when you're making a point on certain topics, and I don't mind doing it then. But someone left a comment on one of the YouTube videos recently that said, "Do a show exposing Alex Jones." And I just went, God, you're obviously a newbie. A lot of people, but that's fine. A lot of people don't know that I've been doing this as long as I have. A lot of people think, every time they find me, they think I'm new on the scene, or they think I haven't been around that long, and frankly, I've been around almost as long as anybody here at this point. I've been researching 20 plus years. I've been doing radio now for 8 years, started in 2007, and I was doing stuff for years and years before I was ever broadcasting or anything else. I've done a billion shows on Alex Jones. I've made 2 films, the Secret Ride Volume 1 and 2, that expose the connections with that. You can just go look over YouTube and archive.org and just all kinds of sites all over the internet where I've done a gazillion shows on Alex Jones. So I'm not going to spend time getting into that unless I have something new to add to it, which at this point in time, I really don't. Except that if you need me at this point to tell you what's up with him, there's not really much I can do to help you. But on the flip side of that, that's also another way I can always tell somebody that I shouldn't trust, or somebody that you shouldn't trust, is somebody that, says I shouldn't expose him or shouldn't talk about him or whatever. And I've had that happen a lot. And that just automatically makes me distrust anybody who says that. Because, number one, it needs to be done. And number two, what do you care? What do you have at stake? Obviously, anybody at this point who's a fan or would tell somebody not to, look into that or expose it, just to me, in my mind, with everything I know, is somebody who would 100% not to be trusted. So, I just wanted to put that out there. But, yeah, I love having topics. I love having stuff that you guys suggest. We had somebody recently that had some questions about the Skinwalkers, and we did a show on that, and I enjoyed that a lot. So, keep those coming. You can leave them here in the messages. You can send me an email, whatever you want to do. But I'd love to have, know what you want to hear me talk about, topics and whatnot. I had a gentleman recently who wanted me to send him a sort of a private chat, and his question was, what have I learned since, what new stuff have I learned since the Lost Book of Inky reading that we did back around, I guess, 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. And, it's honestly not a cop-out. Really, all of my work Since then, I finished The Secret Rite Volume 2 in 2011. If you saw that movie in the past or saw the version on YouTube or whatever, the new remix, remaster version that I put out where everything's cleaned up and sounds great, it's available in my download store now. Definitely get yourself a copy of that if you were annoyed like I was. It was sucked because I put a lot into that film, and it is a good film, and it's the segue film to The Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1, because we talk about the rock over there at the very end of it. But it just, there was, at the time, when I had just gotten a new Macintosh computer, the software, the OS that was out at that time was brand new, so it was having software conflicts with some of the editing softwares and whatnot, and they didn't have any fixes available at the time, and I was on a deadline to get a film out. So I had no choice but to put that film out the way it was. But now I've been able to go back and fix that and get it out, and it's fantastic. But from that time, that's when I had been researching the rock wall since 2004, but I've been doing all this other work and didn't ever have a chance to get to it, and that was kind of a means to an end, getting those other films out and doing the other work to get to that. It was always my plan. And so it really, what's in Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1 and what's in Volume 2 and what will eventually be in Volume 3 when we eventually are able to finish that and have the funds to finish that, whenever that's going to be, who knows. But all that stuff that's in those films is the answer to that question, really. You know, what have I learned since about the stuff that pertains to the Lost Book of Enki and all that, you know, Mesopotamian stuff. And the biggest thing for me is finding out, as you've seen, if you've seen my Lost Secrets films, is that I, like many other people out there, and many people still, you know, a lot of people still think that these ancients that are talked about, whether you call them Anunnaki or the Watchers or whatever you may name you apply to them, were kind of led to believe by a lot of people, even researchers, well-meaning researchers and whatnot, that this was something that was only restricted to that area in the Middle East, the ancient East, that's now Iraq, you know, Acadia, Syria, Babylon, Samaria, Akkad, what else? Pre-Samaria, I guess you had Ubaid. So for me, going all around the country and filming for these Lost Secrets films and seeing references to these ancient names in artifacts like what I saw at the Heavener Runestones in Oklahoma and stuff that I saw at in Tennessee, all that stuff is documented in the Lost Secrets of Ancient America films. Volume 2, of course, we went to the Ohio Valley, which is somewhere I always wanted to go to, and I still want to go back because there's still so much more there to see. But we went to the Nephilim graveyard of the Kings, you know, and we went to the Serpent Mound, the Newark Earthworks, and to see that Babylonian system of numbering gods, and to see that base 60 numerical system in those mounds and whatnot, it was just getting out there and going out there to those sites. If I hadn't done that for those films, I probably would have never actually seen for myself the indicators that whoever these people were that may have had a hand in seeding life on this planet, they were here too. They were in the United States. So that's been the biggest thing for me, and that's, you know, that's one of the reasons why I like questions and I like people to have stuff that, you know, you want me to talk about. So feel free to leave comments in the video and stuff for topics, and email those to me as well. We're kind of in a transitional phase right now with the broadcast. You know, when you do stuff for so long the same way, and you get the same result and nothing ever changes, there should be the impetus to want to do stuff differently. And that's what I'm in the process of doing now. Now, exactly how that's going to be done and all that, I'm still kind of ironing out the kinks. So for now, I'm uploading shows periodically here to YouTube. It won't be that way all the time, because eventually we're going to have a dedicated site just that'll be our video channel, museon.tv. And we'll still be uploading the audio portions of these broadcasts to our archive, our audio archive, membership archive, which you can get a membership to at my website, theglobalreality.com. You just go to the right-hand side of the page. There's a subscribe thing there. You get your subscription. And these audio portions of this will be there as they usually are. But one of the things that's become a staple, as I mentioned, the Lost Book of Inky reading, these book readings have kind of become a staple over the past, 3-4 years of the broadcast, and they've become, in a lot of ways, bigger than I ever thought. But they're a blessing, but they're also a curse. They're good because they get out there to a larger amount of people that probably wouldn't have had access to me or my stuff any other way, but they also bring a whole lot of other riffraff and haters and, shit talkers and whatever else that I wouldn't have had also otherwise. But they also, on the flip side of that, bring in new people that are interested, and that's great. I enjoy that. But I'm not going to be doing the book readings in the context of what you would consider the show proper. I'm not going to be doing those. I used to do, our daily news or whatever topics I would talk about. And then, at the end of the show or whatever, we do book readings. Well, the problem with that is that because there's not enough material to do shows every single day, and because I'm busy working on other projects, working on the Rockwall Dig project, working on film projects, project to project, doing my rock thing with my gem and minerals and crystal business. Oftentimes what happens, and this has happened several times, we'll start a good book reading and it just becomes fragmented. We'll start one and then there won't be shows for a while, or I won't be able to broadcast for a while because we're not having enough support or whatever it may be, which has been the case for about the past year. So I've decided that instead of doing them in the context of the show, I decided to start doing these book readings as a separate standalone thing and putting them up available to purchase in our download store. And I tell you, I just did a recent one. If you don't know about it, it's up for sale. We also have some promotional videos for it here on YouTube. You might have seen the recent one I did talking about it. We did a little preview of Atlantis and the Giants by Dennis Surratt. And that went on sale Monday of this week. And it's a little over 7 hours, and it's great. It's great. I really think it's one of my best, if not the best, that I've read. It's a very, very impossible to find book. There's no PDFs, nothing available out there. Very hard to find book. And after I read this thing, I understood why. And there were so many aha moments and so many little connections and things to all my research I've already done and the Rockwall work and everything. And I found that doing it, not in the context of the show, because in the context of doing it during the show, as I said, it becomes fragmented. And so, sometimes it takes, or can take, months and months and months and months to do one book. You understand? So that means that information is taking a lot more time to get out there to the people than it should. Because a book like, let's say, Atlantis and the Giants, the most recent one I did, had I read that in the context of the show and done it the same way we normally did, it probably would have taken me 6 months to get that book read and get it out. Whereas if I do it standalone, I can just do it at my own leisure, my own time. Because I can pause, I can read a bit, and boy, I tell you what, doing that enabled me to get that audiobook completely done in less than a week. It was really 3 or 4 days. Because I was able to just focus on that, concentrate on. That's why there hasn't been any shows in the past week and whatnot. And I'm actually working on another one right now. I'm not going to tell you about it yet. Because I want this one to be out there and circulate around for a while. I don't want to cram too much out there. Because it's a fine line. I tell you, being a content producer, it's a fine line, because you want to have as much of it out there as you can constantly, but also you don't want to, and I've done this in the past, you put out too much, and then it's too much for people to absorb and catch up to, so they don't want to listen to it at all. So I'm trying to kind of toe the line now between putting out as much content as possible, but without putting out too much out there, so people have time to absorb it and absorb the shows and whatnot. And that's kind of where I've been lately. And that's why the amount of shows you're going to see and output from me will be sporadic. But I think, just based on what I've done recently and what I've been working on, I think the quality's going to go up. So it's the old adage of, quality over quantity. In the past, I was just doing quantity. I was doing 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then 2 hours on Saturdays. And it was just, but was the quality of those shows better? I wouldn't say so. I would say they were real hit or miss. So I would rather do a smaller amount of shows and have them be of higher quality than to try and do a whole lot and have some not be as good as others. So that's where I'm at. So the Atlantis and the Giants reading, it's up now at our download store, our Payloads download store. You can get there by going to my website, theglobalreality.com, and there's a big white block thing in the center that says buy Josh's audiobooks, films, and whatnot there. So all the documentary films are there. The a lot of the audiobooks that we've done are up there for sale, and the newest one should be the first one you see in the store there. Atlantis and the Giants from Dennis Surratt. There's so much of it. It's a very important audiobook. You have to do yourself a favor and read that. But on the flip side of that, I'm not going to be putting those out for free. I'm not going to allow those to be uploaded to YouTube like I have in the past. I don't want any of my future audiobooks that I put up for sale to be, if you do, I'm going to come after you. I'm copyrighting all these because the fact of the matter is people are pulling hits away from my channel by uploading and mirroring my videos on their channel. Now, here's why I care. I don't really, in theory, care if people do that because it gets it out there to a larger audience. But what it does is and this is from talking to other people, I didn't realize this for the longest time. What that does is it dilutes the amount of hits that go to my actual video on my channel, and that actually lessens the amount of people that we reach because it makes my rankings go down lower when those are fragmented and out there. So, because so much is based on the rankings, how many people you view and whatnot, I just won't allow people to be doing that anymore. But this one I don't want it out there. I didn't care before when I did the readings on like Lost Book Eating stuff. I didn't give people permission to upload that and put it out there on YouTube. People did, and I'm okay with it being out there now. But again, that was the way I was doing things then. And we had the radio stream and all that stuff in the past. I'm not going to be doing that anymore. It became too much of a pain, too much of a headache, too much money being flushed down that we're not getting back. So that's kind of where I'm at, is sort of what I'm doing right now with my work. I'm transitioning to do this stuff in different ways and to make what I put out there be more about quality than the quantity of it. You understand? So just want to let you know about that. We've got some different news items and whatnot to get into with you here tonight. My website, again, theglobalreality.com. You can also find our banner that we have up there for our Rockwall Revealed project. And again, we have obtained the digging equipment, a whole construction company to help us out with that. We've obtained some funding for this project. We just need a little bit more to get us the rest of the way to get this done, and we have to get this in. And we've had this up for 3 weeks now, and we've gotten $30 in. And that's just not going to get the job done. We've got to have help in there. There's great perk packages up there, folks. I really don't know what the problem is, and why aren't there more people contributing to this, but there's not much else I can say about it other than, there it is, and please go contribute to it if you can. So we'll get into all this various and sundry news items we have here for you tonight. I'd like to start with this one. Blink-182 co-founder Tom DeLonge goes deep on UFOs, government cover-ups, and why aliens are bigger than Jesus. So now all of a sudden Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 is some UFO expert, and I'm not going to bother reading you this article because the fact of the matter is it's crap. It's a drivel, and this Tom DeLonge guy is a clown. I'm sure he is a plant. He's on, I'm sure, beyond any fiber of my body, ladies and gentlemen, that he is on the payroll of somebody. And not only that, the guy is a Freemason. And, you know, look, I'm not one of those people, just like I'm not one of those people that blames, I don't blame any single group for everything. Obviously, if you've done the research of this, there are a myriad amounts, you know, people from every type of religious background, ethnicity, you know, country of origin, people of all walks of life involved in this grand conspiracy. But Tom DeLonge has used the Freemason square and compass on his guitars through the years. I've seen that for years, and I was never a fan of them. But, you know, you see stuff on TV, you see pictures on the internet and whatnot. You know, you see this shit and you're like, this guy's got fucking square and compasses on his guitars. He's got square and compasses on items of clothing of his. You know, shirts and shoes and whatnot. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's Mr. Conspiracy and Mr. talking about UFOs and aliens. And, oh, I had a missing time incident at Area 51. And, you know, I'm going to save you from reading this. I'm just going to cover one part of this interview, and to me, this should tell you everything you need to know about this guy. On top of the fact that obviously he's a Freemason, and you know, that alone for some people would be enough to say, okay, well, that's who he's working for. Well, you know, that's the thing, though. That's the tricky thing. Just because he's a Freemason doesn't mean that it's the Freemasons who he's working for. He could very well be a Freemason and be working for some higher government authority or who knows what, well above the Freemasons. Because really the amount of Freemasons in the world that actually have a hand in the world affairs is small in comparison to the amount of Freemasons there are worldwide. But and this is another one of those things, you know, there's certain topics that when I hear someone, then the way they respond to it and their answer to a question, it just gives you everything you need to know about them. And so this interviewer says, do you think that the moon landing is real, or do you think NASA faked it? And Tom DeLonge says, I think it's real, absolutely. You know, I don't even have to go any farther. I mean, at this point, if you still believe that, I got a bridge I'll sell you. And listen to this shit that he says, okay? Because this kind of falls under the category of, for me, you know, the old saying of if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, you got to baffle them with bullshit. And to me, that's what it sounds like he's trying to do here. He's trying to baffle everybody with bullshit without giving a straight answer. He says, I think it's real, absolutely. People have to understand, you know, that the Department of Defense is bigger than Apple, right? What does that have to do with anything? What does... Yes, we know the DoD has black budgets and this, that, and the other. So when Apple releases an iPhone, Apple will plan it out and spend billions of dollars and get thousands of people to figure out how to tell that story, how to manage that story, and how to get their point across. There's nothing different in the Department of Defense when it does something big. So when we landed on the moon, they're going to go and give you something to chew on. What's that mean? They're going to go out and find a conspiracy. Who? Who is? The Department of Defense? He doesn't say. They're going to plan out the conspiracy. They made everybody think that we never went there. That way, when you ask questions, you're asking questions they want you to ask. Oh, so they made us believe that we never went there. Okay. They didn't want the conspiracy to be the real fucking question, which is, what was there when we got there? Oh, so he's one of those guys. Oh, yeah, we went. Yeah, I believe we went. And they didn't fake it. And Stanley Kubrick didn't shoot it for the government. And he didn't admit that he shot it for the government in his movie The Shining. No. But no mention of the fact that they went there, probably went there with technology and whatnot they didn't want to show us. They were hiding aliens from us there. They placed the conspiracy just like 9/11. The main thing is that terrorists did it. You hear what he says? They placed the conspiracy just like 9/11. The main thing is, he says right there, first he says the moon landings happened, then he says 9/11, terrorists did 9/11. but yet believe him. Believe that he's sincere, knows what he's talking about aliens and UFOs. And don't worry about those Freemason symbols he has on his guitar and on his shoes. Don't worry about that. I mean, folks, I have a fucking nose for these disinfo clowns. I have for years. I can sniff them out without even having to hear them talk or know anything about them. I know the snakes in the grass when I come across them. And Tom DeLonge is a snake in the grass. He's working for somebody. He's on the payroll for somebody, and he's a perfect candidate. You know, somebody who the younger generation, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s and whatnot, now those are adults, and those adults are interested in these kind of things, so they have a figurehead. And he sounds like he's on board with the type of stuff you would be in, but then he feeds you this other stuff that sounds like new stuff you've never heard before, and meanwhile downplays other established things like the bullshit moon landings and 9/11. Oh, don't worry about, you know, the moon landings or 9/11, but ooh, were aliens up there? I have no doubt in my mind, you know, I don't think anybody else does. I think you're absolutely out of your mind if you think that beings from other planets haven't been here on this planet in the past. But you're also out of your mind if you don't know and understand there's been a massive operation for years to convince us of that as well. Now, many people ask, why would you try to convince people of something or something to be true while at the same time also downplaying anybody that says it's true, but at the same time covering it all up, you know? And that's really a part of the subterfuge. But you know, he says the main thing is that terrorists did it. The backup story conspiracy they fed you was, no, it was an inside job. Oh, so that's the backup story that they fed us? What's the third story? Another nation state, an extra nation state? You know, who did that? So he totally he only goes around the question. He says that he absolutely thinks that the moon landings were real and that 9/11 was done by terrorists. But he throws all this other gobbledygook in there that kind of makes it sound like, oh, well, maybe he's on board with it. It's classic disinfo tactics, folks. That's what it is. And there has been and is ongoing, and it's ramping up more than ever. It's been a slow incline for the past 5 or 6 years, but it's getting more and more pronounced every day that they are ramping up to a phony disclosure. I mean, it's been called that for years, but there's really not a better way to describe it. And there's so many people out there who have been led by these disinfo hucksters, specifically on the UFO and extraterrestrial topic, that they've muddied the waters to the point where you can't even have an intelligent conversation or attempt to do an intelligent amount of research on it, because it's become so convoluted. And there are a lot of good people out there who, when they roll out this phony alien disclosure, there are going to be a lot of people, just like on 9/11, and just like, you know, Kennedy or the moon landing or any other event, that are going to buy it lock, stock, and barrel. They're going to believe the phony disclosure. They're going to believe everything they're told about it. And they're not going to realize it's just another way to get them to go back to sleep. That's their new tactic now, folks. You have to understand this. This is why they're allowing shows on cable TV and everywhere else now covering conspiracies, ancient aliens, America on Earth, whatever it is. Because for years, they have tried to unsuccessfully downplay it all and just ridicule anybody that's talking about it, and it didn't work. So now they've changed tactics, and now they're trying to, it's almost like a policy of admission. You know, they're trying to act like they're putting out the truth out there so that suckers will say, oh, well, we don't have to worry about that. Okay, you know, History Channel did a show on it, so obviously, you know, that's all we need to know about it now. Just like they've done with Rockwall, just like they're trying to do with the alien thing now. They want to have a fake admission of these things so they can get people to shut up about them, so nobody ever gets to the deeper truth. And that's kind of along the lines of some of the stuff we talk about in my new book reading as well, the Atlantis and the Giants. You got to hear this. It's important. It's one of the most important ones that I've ever read. It really is. There's a lot of key stuff in there. But yeah, nice try. And, a lot of people are going to buy into the Tom DeLonge thing, and that's understandable. But for when you know what I know and what many of you know out there about the music business, and let's just get down to it. Blink-182 for a period of time, were one of the biggest bands on the planet. I was never into them. I could never stand the way the guy sings. I just couldn't stand that fucking whiny. It's like, I just could never dig that shit. That fucking annoying ass voice. Ugh. But but the point is that the music industry for decades, since its inception, since the days of Elvis and the Beatles and everything, it's been controlled from the top down. And so there's no reason for you to think that Tom DeLonge is somehow authentic or anything. Like I told you, I can smell these snakes in the grass a mile away. And there is another snake in the grass, by the way, that I want to tell you about. I want to let you guys know that I get asked to do appearances on radio shows from time to time, and I turn down more than I say yes to. And oftentimes, if I've never heard of somebody, oftentimes that's an automatic, no, I'm not going to do it. But not always. Because sometimes, you have to give it a chance and go on somebody's show, and, maybe you'll reach some new people or new audience you haven't done before. So, but I always have a nose for these people. And but one thing I want you to understand is that it really kind of sucks that I have to explain this. Some of you get this, but there are a lot of people that don't get this, so I have to explain it. Just because I make an appearance on someone's radio show does not mean that I am buddies with that person, friends with that person, endorse what that person believes or talks about, or I would go as far as to say I don't even really have to even like the person whose show I'm going on. Because that's not what it's about. It's about getting my message and my work out there to the maximum amount of people possible, and trying to use as many vehicles as we can to do that. So, but there are a lot of people out there that have this weird, fucked up, false assumption, that if I go on somebody's show that I'm automatically endorsing that person, or I think that person's trustworthy, and that's not always the case. It's not, and you need to know that. Have I gone on shows with people who I think aren't trustworthy? Yes. Yes, I have. I absolutely have. And on the flip side of that, the same thing goes for them. Just because they have me on doesn't mean that they too endorse what I talk about or at all. The door goes both ways, But a few months ago, I was on a radio program with a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Church. And I talked to this gentleman prior to the show. And he was, of course, asking about the Rockwall stuff and whatnot, which we talked about on the show. And he had asked me. Well, actually, I'd asked him. We had talked about America on Earth, Scott Walter, that whole thing. And he had asked me. I'm sorry, I had asked him about when he interviewed Scott Walter, and I said, well, he said, well, I interviewed him, and I asked him about the Rockwall thing, because I asked him, I said, did you ask him about that? And he said, yeah, I asked him about it, but he pretty much said to me, that it was out of his hands, and it wasn't up to him, and the final say didn't fall in his hands, and so, You know, pretty much regardless of what he may have personally thought, they weren't going to let him put that in the show because it was their show, and this, that, and the other. And when he told me that, I understood that, and I talked about it here on the show and mentioned that. And he also told me, Jimmy Church also told me that, because we were talking about Coast to Coast AM, and he said, oh yeah, all the producers over there really like you and whatnot. I said, yeah, I know, I'm aware. They're all really cool people over there. Producers, anyway. They all like my work and like me, and they've been nothing but gracious to me. The 2 times I've been over there, I've been totally grateful to all the producers at Coast to Coast AM for letting me come on there. And I'm sure I'll be on there again in the future. But Jimmy Church told me that he was going to be the new weekend host, basically taking the slot that John B. Wells used to do. And at that time, Jimmy Church was doing his show on the Dark Matter Radio Network, which was scheduled to be the home of Art Bell. Art Bell coming back to radio. And he told me that, it was in the can, but that there were some problems because, Art Bell is not on good terms with George Norrie and Coast to Coast AM and that whole thing. And then after I was on the show, I think it was in December, maybe. December, I think. It came out that Jimmy Church was going to be hosting an episode of the weekend of Coast to Coast AM, and Art Bell had an absolute fucking meltdown about it. Even going as far as to sever ties with his long-term producer and guy that he had been with since prior to even starting, Coast to Coast AM and all that. It caused a big hullabaloo. And Jimmy Church later came out and said, no, this is just a one-time thing. It's not in any way going to affect Dark Matter Radio and this, that, and the other. And I was sitting there thinking, man, that's not what he told me. I knew that wasn't the case. But he assured Art Bell, oh no, it's just a one-time thing. And I said, they're going, bullshit, man. Bullshit, it's a one-time thing. It was already established. I don't remember what exact date it was when I went on the Jimmy Church show. You can go back and look. It was a few months ago. But it was already established before I even went on that program. I can tell you 100%, beyond any shadow of a doubt, he told me himself that it was already in the can that he was going to be the new weekend host over there. And he asked me when the last time I was on Coast to Coast AM was, and I said I was February 2014. He said, okay. He said, well, I'll get you on there. I'll have you on there again or something. We'll do it down the road. And so we were talking about Scott Walter, and he asked him about the Rockwall thing, and he just said, I said, he said, well, I just interviewed him or anything. That's all he said. He said, I interviewed him once, but, that was it. And so all that stuff started blowing up with the Art Bell thing, and he asked me to come on or something, and something happened. I couldn't go on, and he asked me what I thought about that whole blow up between him and Art Bell and all that stuff going on, and I sent him a message and said, because one of the things, if you go and listen to that show that I did with Jimmy Church, one of the things that he brings up during that broadcast with me, and he also brought this up to me off the air before the show, was Bill Cooper, William Cooper. And he talked about what a fan he was of Bill Cooper and this, that, and the other. And we actually discussed Bill Cooper, I think, a bit on the show. So, from what he had said both to me privately off of air before the show and then both on the air, I assumed that he was, a pretty big Bill Cooper fan, the way he made it sound. It sounded like he was, a big fan of him. So when all the stuff was going down with him and Art Bell, I sent him a message and I said, hey, remember we talked about Bill Cooper and stuff? He said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, hey, don't ever forget what Bill Cooper said about Art Bell. And because Art Bell admitted, and he even wrote an article about this, it's still on the internet, but Bill Cooper was the first guy to cold bust Art Bell as a Freemason. Because Art Bell admitted it on air, and Bill Cooper, put it out there and talked about it. Someone called in and asked Art Bell if he was a Freemason. And his response was, yes. Are you a fellow traveler? Because that's what they call each other, fellow travelers. So when all this stuff was going down between him and Art Bell, and it looked like he was not going to be on the network anymore, I said, hey, don't ever forget what he said about Art Bell. And about a week later, he sent me a message asking me to come on the show again, and he said, hey, troublemaker. He was email or whatever. Hey, troublemaker. Hey, troublemaker. Kept calling me troublemaker over and over again. I couldn't get a gauge why. I assumed it was because, I threw the tidbit about there. I was like, well, how's that being a troublemaker? Is stating facts and, calling you out on facts and making you aware of facts and reminding you of facts, is that somehow being a troublemaker? Because that's not what my definition of a troublemaker is. So he did his show on Coast to Coast AM, his supposed one-time guest hosting slot, right? And guess who he brings on as his guest straight out of the gates? Scott Walter. And guess what they proceed to talk about? They proceed to talk about the rock wall. And Walter basically goes on to try and downplay, without saying my name, downplay the rock wall. And he does a complete 180 from what Jimmy Church had told me that he said when he interviewed. He did not, in fact, say on air when asked about the rock wall, well, my hands are tied, it's their show, regardless of what I believe or don't believe, it's not up to me. Instead, he resoundingly backed up the History Channel's findings, resoundingly backed that up, said it was 100% the truth, and that no one's ever presented any contrary information, and that the rock wall is a natural formation. He out and out lied about it. And Jimmy Church went on to say in this interview, oh yeah, remember that one time we were hanging out, and remember last week we were hanging out, remember 3 or 4 or 5 months ago when we were hanging out? Jimmy Church point blank told me that he'd never met the guy and never had any contact with this guy other than he interviewed him. But yet on the Coast to Coast AM show, where Jimmy Church is hosting and interviewing Scott Walter, he's going on and on and on. Go listen to it. If you don't believe me, go listen to it. There are multiple examples in there where he talks about them hanging out together personally. And I was just like, you are a fucking snake in the fucking grass. Because this guy's new on the scene, and what got me thinking about this was the Tom DeLonge thing. Because Jimmy Church used to be involved in the music industry. He told me he worked with Sam Kinison. He told me I reminded of him, which, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I like Sam Kinison. I'm the biggest fan of him as anybody. But, he's all these pictures with him. He posted a picture today online with him and Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath. And he said he knew Ronnie James Dio and worked with him once. So my point is, these guys who, have worked in high positions in the music industry, and then all of a sudden, just one day, out of the clear blue sky, when never before they had ever been talking about conspiracies or UFOs or aliens or anything else, all of a sudden these guys are, doing shows, and we're supposed to take them at their word about stuff. And I'm just here to tell you that from my own personal experience, if you're a fan of that guy and you're listening to shows, I don't think he can be trusted. I think he's a snake in the grass. He was deceitful to me. He was deceitful to Art Bell, and not that I care, about that thing, but he told him it was going to be a one-time thing. He obviously knew it wasn't going to be a one-time thing, but he smoothed everything over with Art Bell, and Art Bell said, okay, all's forgiven. Jimmy told me it was going to be a one-time thing, no problem. And then what happened? It all came out over the past few weeks. No, it wasn't a one-time thing. He hosted on there again, and now he's left the network that Art Bell was on, and everything came to pass the way I knew it was going to come to pass 4 or 5 months ago. So, right there. First telling me he'd never talked to Scott Walter, then he's admitting on Coast to Coast AM that remember the other day when we were hanging out? So the whole reason why he ever wanted to have me on was because I think he was trying to set up some kind of, I don't know, he just was trying to start some kind of shit. Maybe get me and Walter together, I don't know. I have no interest in it. The guy's only interested in ratings. He doesn't give a shit about truth. He's only interested in becoming a big name. He interviews all kinds of people who have been proven as obvious shills and disinformation people for years. And yet he interviews them and touts their info like it's the gospel. So just as I, in the past, have warned you about Alex Jones and others, this is somebody who I feel the personal responsibility to warn you about based on my own experiences. I don't think the guy is to be trusted. You know, calling me a troublemaker for pointing out, you know, Bill Cooper talking about Art Bell being a Freemason. You know, you would have thought somebody in that position would have used his position to say, hey, you know, at least on his show, say, what's up with this? You know, or maybe, you know, ask Art Bell about it. Did he do that? No. No, he did not. He ignored that information when I presented it to him and then tried to label me as a troublemaker for bringing it up. And to me, those things are not indicative of somebody who's out for the real truth. That's out for somebody who's out for ratings, out to be liked, and out to be a little social climber. Somebody who just wants to be, you know, a radio star. When you look at this guy's history, he's been a regular. He sounds like I remember people when I was on that show were like, who the fuck is this fucking classic rock DJ sounded motherfucker? He does. He sounds like a fucking greasy classic rock DJ. Hey, we got a greasy track from the Rolling Stones coming up next for you. And we're gonna play a little Steely Dan after that. How about that? Maybe just hey, we're gonna talk about Roswell tonight, and then we're gonna play some Steely Dan deep cuts after that. And I'm not making fun of the guy's voice or anything. I mean, people make fun of my voice. I don't care, but I'm just saying, when you see someone's history and when you see the fact that these guys just seemingly kind of pop up overnight, when they haven't been out there for years doing the work. You know, I had a history and had websites. I was out there for years doing research out in the streets before I ever got on air. But like I said, I can always tell these guys, these plants and whatnot, he used that opportunity for Coast to Coast AM, instead of using it as an opportunity at first hosting to try and get out real info. He used it basically as a platform to very sneakily attack me and my work, and then try to get me to. He knows how he didn't ask me to come on that show, but then he asked me to come on his regular show like 2 days after he was doing the Coast to Coast AM thing, and I just smelled a setup. You know, and I was just sitting there going, the fucking audacity of this guy. You know, you're going to do this fucking show with Walter where you had already proven to me that you lied to me. You told me off air you didn't know the guy, you didn't know him from Adam, you interviewed him once, that was it. Then I hear your show with him where it's obvious that he's making references to me, trying to downplay my work and my research into the rock wall, and then doesn't ask me to come on Coast to Coast again, but asks me to come on his show the following week. Excuse me, like 2 days after being on Coast to Coast AM. It was a setup. I smelled the setup and I said, fuck no. I'm not going to be on your show. I'm not going to fucking walk in your... Because the guy isn't interested in the truth. He's interested... I've known guys like that for years. They're not interested in truth. They're not interested in getting info out there. They're interested in making drama radio. That's all they're interested in. And I just don't have time for people like that. At all. So, again, you know, I always feel a responsibility to let you know about people like that when they come along, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. So, there you go. Let's see what else we got here. Did you know the Soviet cosmonauts carried a bear-killing shotgun to space? The gun was carried during the Soviet era. Was not just any gun. Longtime space journalist Jim Oberg called it a deluxe all-in-one weapon with 3 barrels and a folding stock that doubles as a shovel and contains a swing-out machete. Now, let me ask you, if scientists and governments and whatever else believe that space is an empty vacuum and there's nothing out there. Why the fuck would you carry some deluxe 3-barrel shotgun just in case? I mean, obviously that's an admission that they know something's there that they might need to protect themselves from with that thing. So I saw that article and thought that was a huge admission. Here's another one from Phys.org, physics.org. Ancient tablets displayed in Jerusalem fuel looting debate. At first glance, the Babylonian tablets on exhibit for the first time at the Jerusalem Museum looked like nothing more than pock-marked lumps of clay, but the 2,500-year-old treasures from present-day Iraq have become part of a thorny archaeological debate over how to handle historically significant relics thought to have been dug up in the fog of war by Mideast antiquities robbers. Experts in cuneiform writing, one of the world's earliest scripts, say the collection of 110 cracker-sized clay tablets provides the earliest written evidence of the biblical exile of the Judeans in what is now southern Iraq, offering new insight into the formative period of early Judaism. Yeah, notice how these are in Israel. Notice how they have their hands on them. That's what it's all been about over there. That's why after 9/11 they cooked up the weapons of mass destruction thing. And you notice how recently they've come out, the weapons of mass destruction thing became a talking point and an issue again. The fact that they were never found. And then they come out, what was it, last week or whatever, week before, whenever. Oh no, we found them, yeah. Actually, we did find weapons of mass destruction, yeah. The CIA actually found those 10 years ago. 2005, yeah, we found those. Really? Well, who had them? Oh, well, this guy. Cricket, chirp, chirp. I mean, that was their answer. This guy. Not a name, not an identity. Well, what happened to this guy? Well, we bought him from him and then we, blew his head off. But trust us, we didn't feel that we wanted to tell the American people about this, so the CIA kept it a secret. And now we're letting you know that actually we did find those weapons of mass destruction. It seems to me that if the CIA had knowledge of weapons of mass destruction in 2005, the guy whose dad was the former head of the CIA, who happened to be president at the time, you would think that would be something that he would have fought tooth and nail to get out there. Because that was whose head was that hanging over? He was hanging over his. But now that we've gotten 2 terms of Barack Obama, now that we're on the tail end of his term, they do this every time. Every time they're going to change the guard. Now they're moving us over to go back to having a Republican president again. And they always do this every time. If a Republican's in office, then what do? Then they slowly start demonizing that person and making the next, phony 2-party system candidate be the hero. They're doing it all over again. So that we will take willingly a Republican president next time, because that's part of the game, and they'll have another one of their controlled ops in there. But what Saddam Hussein was getting ready to unveil with a lot of these ancient artifacts, rebuilding Nebuchadnezzar's palace, was going to decimate the established ideologies of Judaism. Point blank. So that's exactly why there's been this ongoing cover-up and a continued cover-up and a continued disinformation campaign about these ancient antiquities and the whole ancient Middle East altogether. And that's why they're so afraid of work like mine and the rest of it, because this stuff ultimately is what is going to prove, and already has. I mean, my work really already has proven that. I mean, we know that Judaism was just taken from Babylonian mystery religions and taken lock, stock, and barrel, just like every other religion was taken from other previous early things. I mean, hell, the Egyptians had stories of the crucifixion and the resurrection and walking on water and all that thousands of years before Christ. There was, in fact, stories of those all over the planet. These various deities would go around, set themselves up as gods, and that's what it was. UK scientists say aliens may have sent space seeds to create life on Earth. Is this the panspermia thing that they roll out every 3 or 4 years? They roll out a new story on panspermia as if they've never talked about it, never put that theory out there before, and act like somehow new. And they're doing it again. I mean, I probably, since I've been doing shows, probably seen this rolled out 10 times. This one and the one about the rock in Antarctica having microbes on it that may have seeded life on Earth. They have rolled that thing out as a new news story 20 fucking times since I've been doing radio since 2007. And every time they package it and roll it out in a new news story as if it's new information. And then you read it and you're like, oh, this is the same old shit. And I'm sitting here looking at this going, because I saw people post this all over, social media. Oh, aliens may have sent space seeds to create life on Earth. And I said, oh, is this another fucking panspermia article? Scroll down here. Look, this seeming piece of science fiction called directed panspermia will probably not be taken seriously. Oh, there it is. Should we call the cosmos seeking ET, or is that risky? See all these articles now? All these articles about, well, maybe life on Earth was seeded from panspermia, or should we be broadcasting signals out to try and find extraterrestrials, or is that risky? Oh, we don't know. It used to be a kook and a quack for even discussing it either way. Now serious scientists are saying maybe we should weigh the pros and cons of trying to contact these. They are getting ready for a massive phony disclosure, folks. We've been seeing the indicators for a while, but it's ramping up even more and more. This is another one. There's so many things through the years that I've talked about on my shows and whatnot. So much, it's just hard to even cover all of it and refresh on it. But a lot of topics and a lot of things I've talked about on these shows through the years have fallen under the category of stuff where, when you've been researching this stuff, as I mentioned earlier, as long as I have, you just start to get a nose for things. You get a discernment, you get an undefinable intuition about things. Sometimes that you have no proof or basis of in any way at the time. Like, for instance, for me, 9/11. On the day of 9/11, as soon as I saw the planes hitting the towers, I said, here we go. This is another Kennedy. They'll have a fucking patsy rolled out on TV in 15 goddamn minutes. And of course they did. And I was ridiculed by everybody. All my friends, everything. Oh, you fucking idiot. Really. I got in heated fucking arguments with very close personal friends because they said, oh, you're just a goddamn, everything's a conspiracy to you, Josh. Everything is a fucking conspiracy. Well, this is fucking different. This is not a fucking conspiracy. And I said, it is a fucking conspiracy because you can see their hallmarks right out of the gates. But what did I have at that moment on 9/11? What did I have to prove that feeling of it? Nothing. At that moment, I didn't have really anything other than I just knew it in my very fiber. And I'm not trying to act like I'm special. There were a lot of people out there besides me that felt that same way the day of 9/11, but that's not the only thing I've had that feeling about. And boy, I'll tell you, every time I had a strong feeling that something to be true, I've always been proven right about it later on. And one of my favorite movies when I was a kid growing up, may have been somebody else's favorite out there too. One of my favorite movies when I was a kid was War Games with Matthew Broderick. Remember that movie? And I remember being a kid, man, and I don't know whether you could call it intuition, or whatever have you. But I can remember watching that movie when I was a kid and feeling like there was some sort of element of truth in there, but had no way to prove that there was, I had no way to, but I felt this intuition as a kid watching that movie, and I watched it again a few years ago as an adult, and I felt the same way. And watching that through the lens of being a kid, and then watching it through the lens of being an adult, knowing what I know now, it was wild. Normally I feel completely different. Normally when I watch something that I watched when I was younger, then I watch it when I get older, normally it's two different, viewpoints. It's almost like seeing it for the same time. But strangely enough, when I watched that film again, I had that feeling all over again like I did when I was a kid, like there's something going on here. And I just felt even stronger that movie, that story was based on some kind of real occurrence, because they went through such great lengths in that movie, specifically with the stuff with NORAD and the supercomputer, what was it called, the Whopper or something like that in the movie. But so when I saw this story this week, I was beside myself. I really was beside myself. I said, God damn it, yet again, here's another one. I mean, folks, always trust your intuition. You know, that little thing, man, that comes and tells you sometimes. And here it is. I was right. The computer simulation that almost started World War III. And who was involved with this? None other than who I've been told and seen as being one of the highest guys in the positions of power, Zbigniew Brzezinski. Guys, how old is this guy? Him and fucking David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger are all in their fucking 90s. Still running and controlling the game, aren't they? Remember the 1983 movie War Games? The film is about a computer game with the potential to start thermonuclear war, but strangely this scenario is more truth than fiction. I'm telling you, man, I knew even as a kid, I just felt when I was a kid, I was like, this is a real story. This is true. This happened. But for some reason, they don't want us to know that it really happened. And I remember telling somebody that when I was younger, and them really saying, oh, you're stupid. You know, you're an idiot. This is fiction. But I coined this phrase some years ago. They fictionalize the truth, so the truth seems like fiction. And indeed, here we are, 32 years after the release of the film War Games. And, the young 7-year-old Josh was proven right. In 1979, programmers at NORAD almost started World War III when they accidentally ran a computer simulation of a Soviet attack. In the early morning hours of November 9, 1979, Zbigniew Brzezinski, the National Security Advisor to President Carter, was awakened by a horrifying phone call. According to NORAD, the Soviet Union had just launched 250 missiles headed straight for American soil. Brzezinski received another call not long after the first, and NORAD was reporting that it was now 2,200 missiles. And this was the moment that every American living through the Cold War had feared, and the U.S. officials had no plans to notify the public. Now that's another one of those key things that I've talked about for years and had arguments with people about. Folks, even if they knew, and they do know, even if they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that life on Earth was going to end 10 minutes from now, you'd never know about it. You're never going to know about it till it's absolutely too late. Because their thing is to keep their power structure in place indefinitely at all costs. And that right there is the reason why they want to keep the truth suppressed about everything, no matter what topic it is, the rock wall, any of this stuff. And I talk a lot about that. We talk about that a bit in the newest reading, the Atlantis and the Giants, because the question I've had for a long time, especially since I've gone out to all the sites and all the mounds and whatnot, looking at these alignments, I started to really see evidence that someone's trying to warn us of something. Someone's trying to, in the past, was trying to warn us that, look, there are cyclical events that happen that cause cataclysms, and I really feel that we now know what that is. But I'm not going to, no spoilers, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'll talk about it, what it is, in a month or two, or somewhere down the road. I want to give people enough time. It's only been out, not even a week, it's been out 3 or 4 days, this reading. So I want to give everybody out there a chance to hear the reading on their own before I give the spoilers as to this cataclysm, cyclical cataclysm they've been keeping a secret. Brzezinski didn't even bother to wake up his wife. He assumed that he and everyone he knew would soon be dead, so there was no sense in troubling her. One can only imagine the dismal post-apocalyptic world flashing before his mind's eye as he thought about his next steps. I knew that if it were true, then within about half an hour, I, my loved ones in Washington, and the majority of America would cease to exist. I wanted to be sure that we'd have company. And Brzezinski's the guy, you know, created Al-Qaeda, funded bin Laden, set him up. What Brzezinski meant was that he wanted to make sure that if the attack was real, that the Soviet Union would be little more than a giant hole in the ground. If we were going down, our communist adversaries were going down with us. I love that. Mutually assured destruction is just a fantastic mindset, isn't it? Oh yeah? Oh yeah, you're gonna fuck us? Well, fuck you right back. Shh. Then we'll all die. Yeah! But see, these guys have contingencies. They've got bunkers, underground bunkers, bug outs, off-planet options. That's why we haven't seen worldwide nuclear war yet. There's only one reason why we haven't seen worldwide nuclear war and destruction and everything else. There's one reason and one result. Because at the time when there was worry and fear that was going to happen, the powers that be and the elites did not have the technology for the proper contingencies that they have now, and that they will have even more of in the future. That's what everything's about. See, we like to believe that technology and everything is working towards advancing humankind anyway. It's not about advancing humankind. It's about advancing them and their agendas and them themselves. And they want to live on indefinitely. So, yes, War Games was actually a true story. Believe it or not. It is wild stuff, isn't it? Let's see. Well, I think that's all we've got. I think we're going to leave it there tonight. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're listening on YouTube, thanks for checking out the stuff. TheGlobalReality.com is our website. Folks, please go and support our work. We got to have some funds in here to be able to do. The more support that we get, the more often there will be shows. Oftentimes when the shows are sporadic and we don't have very many, it's because I'm having to do other things to try to keep the lights on, so I'm not able to concentrate and do shows. Plus, working on trying to get the rock wall dig going off the ground and everything else. We're shooting to have that going in a couple of months, but we still got to have the funding. So go to my website, make a donation at our donate button there, our PayPal donate button. You can also hit up the Indiegogo banner on my website for the Rockwall Revealed project, and also hit our archives, get yourself a membership there, and our download store as well, where you can download The Lost Secrets of Ancient America, Volume 1 and 2, Secret Right, Volume 1 and 2, the newest audiobook, and a whole lot more. TheGlobalReality.com is my website, folks. Josh Reeves signing off. We'll see you next time. Take care.